Hi everyone, my name is AJ. Welcome to The Money Store. This is a channel where we talk about La Luz del Mundo and its past, present, and future, if any. Today, I want to read a number of articles that Sara Pozos Bravo has written on the platform Milenio. And so I want to read a couple of things that this person has written, has put out. This isn't everything that Sara Pozos has written. If you're familiar with other videos that we've uploaded on this channel, you'll know that Sara Pozos was one of the members that was one of the people that contributed to the Journal of Sesnud, its LLDM edition back in April 2020. And she also participated in the conference that was held in the summer of 2022, like basically right after Nason pled guilty in early of June 2022. And she wasn't the only member there. Other members that were there were Big Valle Estrada, Jack Freeman, etc. maybe. But these people are important because these people are actual members of the church, help run the church, and are pretty nefarious figures, I would say, if not completely, just asinine people that are a part of the organization that continue to perpetuate it up into the present day. And so I want to read a number of things from Sara Pozos because she in that Sesnud journal was, I think, the only church member who was a part of it. Of course, you have people like Donald Westbrook and maybe J. Gordon Melton, Massimo Introvigne for sure. Those people aren't members, but those people were very much in contact with Big Valle Estrada and Jack Freeman and whatnot. And those people apparently had some sort of oversight or say in what these pseudo academics had to say about La Luz del Mundo. And so Sara Pozos is one of these interesting figures in that she is basically a spokesperson for the church and has been caught lying and deceiving people left and right across years and years about the organization. And so I want to read some sort of opinion columns that are included on the Milenio website because I think they're a little interesting. They're very quick to go through, and sometimes you'll find that they don't do anything, or maybe they do something, and the thing that they do is just lie and obscure the actual reality of the church and whatnot. Of course, before we move on, please like, comment, subscribe. Give me any ideas that you have. Please send any resources that you have towards my way. I'm writing a book on LLDM. I got about 100 pages. It's super choppy. I'm not going to share that with anybody as of now. But otherwise, I have helpful resources that I have put together. And I would like to put these things out there because this field of studies of La Luz del Mundo is up and coming, and really it's really going down. It's really down and the opposite of coming, because this group has been in a crisis of shrinkage for the past 6 years, and it is no accident that people like Sara Pozos and other spokespeople, other sort of learned people in the group are continually beating the drum that the group is growing and there's fantastical things happening left and right, when really it is far from the truth. And I think some of these quick columns that Sara Pozos has in this venue are interesting to go through very quickly. I wonder how long this video will take. I will try to not take too long. Besides Sara Pozos' involvement in the Journal of Sesnud, of course, she attended that conference in 2022. She is not so much a hardcore spokesperson for the church these days, but she basically is for all intents and purposes. She is one of these figures of the LLDM intelligentsia, which is anything but, what that word truly means. This person is not someone who is in pursuit of the truth. And as often as she's commenting on the state of affairs in Mexico and commenting on other sort of worldly events, she's a sycophantic person who has a dog in the fight. She is, not just, she's not just a member in the church that has some sort of sunk cost into it and wants to continue defending it up until a certain point. We don't know when that point is, but there may not be a point for of that. There may not be that point for Sara Pozos' life, because she has been writing on La Luz del Mundo for a long time, and she, I think, wrote a thesis or a thesis or a dissertation in Mexico more than a decade, maybe 2 decades ago, on La Luz del Mundo. And I'm trying to find that. If you happen to have a copy of that, send that my way. I really want to read it. But otherwise, we can take a look at what we have available to us, and it's just, we'll see what we can see. Again, if you're interested in what I had to say about her inclusion in the Journal of Sesnud, go check that video out from last summer. I believe it is in part 2, and that part 2 is like 2 to 3 hours long, and part 1 is like 2 to 3 hours long. Go look for that. You can find it rather quickly, and you can probably even go read it for yourself. That journal is freely available. Let me know what you think if you happen to read that. Otherwise, I will say that this is probably the last thing I'll say before starting to share my window, is that Milenio is one of these premier mainstream outlets in Mexico that has, ever since the arrest of Nason back in 2019, has been pretty good about informing the public about what La Luz del Mundo is in Mexico. You know, sometimes bringing on the spokesperson. You know, back in 2019, 2020, they used to bring on someone like Silem Garcia Peña, but these days that guy is just not on that venue or really invited at all. He was just always constantly begging to have a public response and some sort of platform to respond to all the things that Milenio was covering in regards to Nason's case. But of course, you know, Silem is not part of the defense team. Sara Pozos is not part of the defense team of Nason. They were not then. They are not now. They won't be in the future. And if they are in the future, that's an open question. I highly doubt it. But it is no accident that creatures such as these come out of the woodwork to try to defend the church, because they have some sort of major association with it beyond just the average member. These people are on the bankroll. They're on the payroll in some capacity, and we'll see what they have to say. If anything, you know, we'll see if they have anything to teach us about this group. But Silem is not really showing up in Milenio anymore these days. Of course, Milenio does have stories that they do on La Luz del Mundo here and there. But yeah, these days you don't see Silem on that platform because he just truly has nothing to contribute other than his psychophantic views about what he thinks La Luz del Mundo is. And so here's the Milenio website. I have 10 articles I want to go through. They are about like a handful of paragraphs each. And so there's not a lot going on in these things that should take up too much time. And we don't have to very carefully go through them, but they are in chronological order. I do want to start with the first two that are the most recent. And Sara Pozos has her own page on the Milenio website with like dozens of pages, but really it's only like a dozen because I think the website is kind of busted in that you can only go to like the teen numbers, and then from there there's like a repetition of the search results. It was sort of strange, but basically she's written on more than just La Luz del Mundo. She has this other sort of material that she writes on like the genocide in Gaza, on like world events, on sort of this tangential thing and this other tangential thing that don't really have anything to do with the church. But every once in a while, she crawls out of whatever rock she came from, and she'll write a little bit about La Luz del Mundo. So here you'll see I'm on the Milenio website. I had to download ad blocker because their website is insane with the ads, and it would just completely drive my browser crazy in a way that it shouldn't be. We're gonna read some columns from her here in Milenio, and I want to start with this one, which is from her. And I'm using the Google Translate feature extension here because this is a channel to speak about La Luz del Mundo in English, and this will help me go through it rather quickly. So if there are some sort of grammatical or editorial mistakes, then we will, you know, chalk that up to the translation thing. And if anything, I would just say that Milenio's standards are going to be higher than some of the other writings that we have, than some of the other publications that we have read elsewhere. So let's start with Sara Pozos. This is from May 13th, 2024. So basically last year, basically a year ago. This is titled The Light of the World in the United States, Part 1 of 2. As inexplicable as it may be to some, La Luz del Mundo continues to grow in Mexico, the United States, and more than 70 other countries. Particularly, this growth has been more than sustained in the United States, a multicultural country and the American dream for many. Number one, I think this is maybe the first time I've heard a spokesperson or someone in the church say that the church is present in 70 countries. I'm a little baffled at that because, again, when Nason was first arrested in 2019, you had Sara Pozos on national television, you had Silem Garcia Peña on national television and at press conferences, and left and right, they were constantly, you know, regurgitating the claim that the church had 5 million members around the world. And they would also say alongside that the church is present in 50 countries. You'll find that in the Sexton Journal, and you'll find that in other publications. But here, and then actually, when I speak about the church, I would say that it's present in 60. I don't doubt that. That number can be artificially inflated. It is not beyond these higher ups to inflate this number, to push, to send people out to South Korea, to maybe one day send people out to North Korea. Maybe we have members in China. I don't think that has happened yet. But no matter what, you're going to find this number being constantly pummeled up. And while there's this, and she's like talking about how there's this particular growth going on, well, she will never, talk about how she won't mention the 5 million member claim here. Maybe in older pieces that we'll see, but in this one, the most recent one in Milenio, she's not saying that. And you know what? This came out a year ago, and I'm highly interested. Please, if within the past year you heard anyone say that the church is present in more than in 70 countries or more, let me know, because I want to know that, because otherwise I was operating on the number 60, and I that seems like a fair number to deal with. The church members are technically present in this many places. They've conquered none of them, of course, absolutely have conquered none of them, but nonetheless, this high number is crazy, and I really can't wait to dive into this. Such as, like, for example, so she said this 6 years ago, and I know I'm stopping right now, but she said this 6 years ago, and you should know this prior to going into the rest of this. On national television in July 2019, she said that the church has 1.9 million members in Mexico, and that is not true. That is a number 9 times higher than what the Mexican census, INEGI, counted in 2020. They released their results in January 2021. They said that there were only 200,000 La Luz del Mundo members that they could find, and a quarter of those are children. So take that grain of salt. Take that fact going forward, because if they can lie to you about numbers and in every which way, they can lie to you about anything. If you're willing to believe them, and they want to find out to whatever extent you are willing to believe their lies. Here, I'm willing to believe that they're present in 70 countries, but goddamn, I have not heard this number elsewhere. And here she is, saying it, putting it out. Let's dive in. She says this growth is inexplicable for some reason. Try to explain it, Sara. Let's see. The decentralization strategy of the annual meeting held each year in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, established in 2017 by church leader and apostle of Jesus Christ, Nathan Joaquin Garcia, has created the conditions for the continued growth and strengthening of local churches throughout each country where it is present. Here, this is true. In August 2017, in that Santa Cena, I think right as it was over, that same day on the 14th, or maybe the next day on August 15th, Nathan did say to all the members that, hey, from now on, there's not going to be a full-on one central Holy Supper in Guadalajara going forward, as there always had been in years prior. Rather, he was signaling that in February 2018, in San Bernardino, California, there was going to be a Santa Cena for members in the United States. And, we'll get into those numbers later. She'll talk about that later in some of these other older columns that she has. But here, she's talking about how in 2017, there was a decentralization strategy that Nathan and other people took into play. And I'm sure that there was some strategy to it, but goddamn, the dude got arrested quite soon after, and he was doing horrific things in these Santa Cenas in the United States, and around this time too, in like the Santa Cenas in Mexico. So, whatever strategy was maybe put together at one point, it quickly went out the window, and now you have people like her, like, not even saying that there's 5 million members here in this post, but we'll keep reading. For many years, the city of Guadalajara has been the international meeting place for the LLDM church. The church's international quarters in Hermosa Provincia year after year welcome thousands of pilgrims who gathered in August to commemorate the Holy Supper, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's all true. The Feast of the Brothers, as the faithful of the church are colloquially known, brought an impressive economic benefit to the capital of Jalisco and the state as a whole. I don't doubt that, but you know what, Sara? Go tell this to Donald A. Westbrook in his most recent chapter on La Luz del Mundo, because he's saying that the Santa Cena that he went to in February 2020 in Dallas, maybe there's some other ones that he went to, but he's saying that those decentralized ones are not major economic events as they were for the Hermosa Provincia. He doesn't talk about that stuff, but here she's acknowledging it, and so I feel like her and Westbrook got to talk a little bit to get more on the same page. But the growth. Let's keep reading. But the growth in the number of attendees, which exceeded 600,000 during a stay of more than a week, directly impacted the demand for public services and accommodation primarily. Evidently, the visit of so many faithful bothered some, and some authorities have been complicating the reception of believers with extra legal requirements. The difficulties grew less and less, complicating the organization, security, road closures, public transportation, and so on. So here she's saying, so she was talking about the Santa Cena in 2017, and then here she's going to talk about some other Santa Cena, I'm presuming, that talks about 600,000, because I don't have a number for that one in 2017. But if you read what Massimo Introvigne has to say, he supposedly, flew around on a drone around the Hermosa Provincia and counted everybody, and he counted 600,000 people. And I wonder what the numbers are now in these days, but we'll see what they are. But again, I'm just pausing here to say that they are, these higher ups are on the same page in certain ways, but sometimes you have Sara Pozos speaking in the way that she does here, and it sort of brings up certain questions if other readings are fresh on your mind, right? So in 2017, the nation announced that there would be a Holy Communion for the entire United States. The following year, in February 2018, the February 2018 meeting brought together more than 100,000 believers in San Bernardino, California, who exercised their right to religious freedom for 4 days. All believers in the United States were invited to that meeting, along with some guests from Guadalajara and Europe. Yeah, from Guadalajara and Europe, but Sara Pozos, does this not strike at the very heart of your claims that there's a bajillion members, left and right, that there's 1.9 million members in Mexico? And then, how many members would you say are in the United States? I don't know if she's ever said such a number. I don't have it off the top of my head. But if 100,000 people, in the United States are showing up in San Bernardino, California, in the Glen Helen outdoor amphitheater, which has a capacity of like less than 100,000, then like, well, isn't there like a major issue here wherein not everyone in the United States showed up to this sort of mandatory ceremony to renew their faithful pact with God? And here you just have 100,000 people showing up with some guests from Guadalajara and Europe. Those guests from Guadalajara and Europe were invited for the purposes of inflating this number. There was also the justification that members in Guadalajara were invited to the Santa Cena in San Bernardino, California, because they in Guadalajara had so often been the hosts of people and had taken on that burden for years of for year after year for all sorts of influxes of tourists and these pilgrims that come in. And I was one of those people. And so this is true that people from Guadalajara were in this Santa Cena, but again, should this not trouble you that you can only account for 100,000 people in the U.S. going to this thing, and even then, it's not like a lot. But look, let's move on. A year later, following the illegal detention of the Apostle of Jesus Christ in 2019, more than 500,000 delegates from more than 60 countries, excluding the United States, Canada, and Europe, gathered again to celebrate the Holy Communion in the Guadalajara metropolitan area. So here she's saying there was a Santa Cena in February 2018 for the United States people, and then there was another Santa Cena, of course, in like in August of 2018, or there has to have been at least like in the United States. I'm sorry, not in the United States, but in Guadalajara. And then in 2019, this is like 2 months after the arrest of Nason, there is a Santa Cena held again in Guadalajara, excluding the United States, Canada, and Europe. Okay, but I'm very sure you would have probably found some US Americans, some Canadians, some European there. I'm pretty sure you would have found them there for some reason, even though apparently they're excluded. They gathered again at the in Guadalajara. And here she's saying that it's more than 500,000 delegates from more than 60 countries. So look, in 2019, she's saying there's 60 countries. So look, in 2024, she is writing that back in 2019, they were present in more than 60 countries. I was probably running with that number and saying that way back then. But again, probably not everyone was saying that back in 2019. They were probably saying 50. But look, Sara Pozos, in this article, you saw it with your own eyes. She's saying that it is 70 countries at this point. So let's continue, and we'll see what this has to add to anything. Then came the pandemic, and the only gathering that took place was in August 2020 in Phoenix, Arizona, where the local church there, representing more than 5 million believers worldwide, commemorated and participated in the Holy Communion. So look, it's 2024, and she's writing about how in 2020 there were 5 million members, and some gathered in Phoenix, Arizona. And I guess she's still affirming that 5 million member number back in 2019. But again, we'll have to see what she says at other points. This decentralization strategy has been more than successful. The international mobility of ministers from all countries marks an unprecedented chapter in the contemporary history of Christianity. The economic benefits it brings to local countries, the visibility these activities give in the church, the strengthening of faith are some of the most evident successes of this strategy. How much of a strategy is it? I mean, I really don't care. I'm very sure that they want the church to grow. I'm very sure that they are thinking strategically about what countries they send people to, which people they send, for how long, to what extent, what do retention numbers look like, what do enlistment of members look like in these places. But look, here what I just find interesting is that this person is going to write about the history of Christianity and say that this is an unprecedented chapter in the history of Christianity. I mean, La Luz del Mundo is just baby small, and it is just not, and it is just a sort of deceitful, silly thing to start boasting in this way, because La Luz del Mundo is not that special in the grand umbrella of Christianity. There are a butt ton of Pentecostal churches from which La Luz del Mundo is a stem from. There are a butt ton of these churches that I'm very sure there have been larger religious communions under the branch of Christianity that have happened than these ceremonies that she's focused in on, right? So let's keep reading. In this story, the United States has become one of the countries with the fastest growth in the light of the world. The 2018 Holy Communion, where more than 100,000 believers gathered, raised concerns among some, and I have always maintained this hypothesis, led to the beginning of persecution against the church leader and believers. In the next installment, I'll analyze the large gatherings held so far in 2024 in the United States. So look, this is just some dumb column where Sara Pozos is going to put out some numbers, and then she just has this asinine take that she thinks that because La Luz del Mundo had his major party over in the Glen Helen Outdoor Amphitheater in February of 2018, that is apparently why there was persecution against the church leader and the believers. It wasn't against the believers. It was believers themselves that stopped being believers because certain things happened to them, and they came out of the woodwork to tackle the abuses that they faced in that very state, in California, and then also, of course, in Guadalajara too. But again, this is a very quick column. I do want to move on to the next one, and just keep these numbers in mind, because this person loves numbers in certain extents. She likes to launder the reputation of the church. She likes to write these columns out on Milenio, but you're not going to learn anything on them. What I do appreciate are these two comments from people on this Milenio article. I say we read them very quickly. David de la Luz, of course, gets to what I'm trying to say. This article doesn't mention a single source for this data and statistics. It doesn't have the quality of an opinion piece, but rather a press release for marketing purposes. That's it. That straight up, that's just what this video is about. That's all Sara Pozos is to the church, And then here's someone else's comment. They quote her, and then they say, "The level of fanaticism of educated people like you is incredible. Imagine the poor people whose level of education in some cases did not even reach primary school. And then yet you have people like, Sara Pozos around here just saying just the dumbest things possible about the church in the year 2024. And, let's move on to the next piece, because that was part one. And here's part two of that piece. This is from May 27th, 2024. In my previous post, I explained the context in which the La Luz del Mundo Church began the decentralization of its most important festival, blah, blah, blah. This decision has had a positive impact on strengthening local communities and expanding across the United States. Okay. There are in the United States, after 4 years without holding any such gatherings, after 4 years without holding any such gatherings, the Apostle Nathan instructed the celebration of several regional Holy Communion events. The one in Texas took place in Houston, where more than 15,000 believers gathered in the city center on February 14th of this year. In 2024, is she talking about? Or is she talking about I actually don't know what year she's talking about, but just add these numbers, okay? Just add these numbers. 15,000 in Houston. Okay. 20,000 in California. Okay, that's not. And then in this May, two simultaneous meetings mobilized more than 50,000 believers. The Chicago and Washington meetings led to expanded spaces and program adjustments to meet the demand of the thousands of attendees who arrived, doubling and tripling the need for space in Chicago and Washington, respectively. Here, she's talking about other small Santa Cenas that were held in different cities in the United States simultaneously, and I guess not. But check this out. Like 15,000 here, 20,000 here, 50,000 over here, and like that doesn't amount to 100,000 like you were talking about in February 2018 in the Glen Helen Amphitheater, right? I'm willing to believe that there's 100,000. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, when it comes to this right here, what you're talking about here, this doesn't amount to over 100,000 again. And you made it easier for people. They don't have to all fly out to expensive ass California on the West Coast, far from Chicago, on the other side of the continent from Washington, D.C. You made it easier for people, and yet these numbers are lower. And you know what? That's fine. Later this month, Holy Communion services for Arizona and Oregon are scheduled. Surely, like the previous gatherings, they will bring together thousands of believers who, despite the persecution and discrimination they have suffered these past 5 years, have not lost their faith in God, their hope in Jesus Christ, and their trust in the Creator to vindicate the name of the Apostle Nathan. His name has not been vindicated. These people's trust is in the gutter. I mean, she's just kind of giving some numbers for some things, and then it just kind of, I haven't learned anything. Excuse me. Something important is worth highlighting in this powerful expansion of the church in the United States. The authorities of Ontario, California, where the Holy Communion was held at the end of February of this year, in 2024, recognized the economic benefits of the meeting of the brethren in that city and offered their hospitality to the city to become a host for this type of gathering. So I mean, doesn't this go in direct contradiction to what you're talking about in the previous article, where you had your little line about how, oh, everyone's mad that we met up in the Glen Helen Amphitheater, and so then that's why they started opening up this criminal case against Nason for sexual abuse, for sexual crimes against minors. No, it was because of sexual crimes against minors. And those happen because of the stupid doctrine that you guys have, where Nason is heliocentric in the middle of this thing, indispensable, and everything funnels and revolves around this guy, that people ended up getting groomed, unduly coerced to doing things with him. And they spoke up. They decided to stop being members, to speak up against what happened to them. And excuse me, like, I thought that's why y'all got in trouble. You're saying that you got in trouble for certain reasons, and then now, like 5 years later, oh, they actually like us, and they locked our guy up in Chino, California, but you know what? We're still gonna have this meeting over here in California, however far away from him he is. He's not gonna zoom in or nothing. And I mean, whatever economic benefits that they brought to the church, holy shit, all that money must have gone in the gutter to prosecuting Nason and his decision to prolong his to delay his trial for like 3 years. That guy spent millions of dollars in his defense. I'm sure the prosecutor spent more, maybe. And then what? Now the authorities in Ontario like you because you guys bring economic benefits. So is it economic benefits or spiritual benefits that are important here? Because apparently the spiritual benefits, which are mandatory benefits that you should go and attend to, right? That's not being acknowledged here at all. But maybe this isn't the venue for that. Maybe this is just a venue for her to spill out some stupid words. And I guess members in the church are going to read this, share this amongst themselves on social media and whatnot. And like, do they learn anything from this at all, other than just being a press release for the church, right? Let me keep reading. The attitude of the authorities in Jalisco and Mexico is diametrically opposed. While in Jalisco, they constantly obstructed the meeting. In California, they opened the door for it to continue. What was a problem in Guadalajara is seen in California as an opportunity to contribute economic benefits to their city. Jalisco missed the opportunity by denying support, while California opened its doors all the time. What? I mean, hold on. Let's go to Spanish. What is this person even saying? This directly contradicts what you were talking about in the previous thing. And then also, it's just not true, because you guys have benefited way more in Jalisco and Guadalajara than ever. I mean, the Hermosa Provincia is a neighborhood on what was once the outskirts of Guadalajara, and now it is, better integrated and whatnot. That whole neighborhood exists precisely because Eusebio Joaquin was had military ties to, I think, the governor at the time in Jalisco. I would have to go, there exactly. But look, that neighborhood where all those homes were partitioned out and the church was built in the center and all these streets are radiating out from it. All of that is basically the greatest economic benefit that the church has ever received ever. And here Sara Pozos is just gonna like undercut it. I probably didn't explain that as best as I could, but I hope you know what I mean here, because this is just kind of funky. Sara Pozos is like this. She'll just kind of she's kind of like a little bit of a learned person, but she needs a little more ed, on that, because sometimes she'll just say like very strange things that don't, again, what may seem like gold in the eyes of members, but it is anything but that. Guadalajara will no longer receive the thousands of faithful from other countries, but it will continue to have the same crowds because the spaces will be filled by the powerful expansion and growth of the number of faithful in Mexico. Give us some numbers. I mean, give us some numbers. You've given some numbers in the past. In 2019, you said that there's 1.9 million members in Mexico. And what's going on here? I mean, you guys were reaching 600,000 back in 2019, and what's going on in this one? Because I mean, there's been no Santa Cena that has 1 million members, and the church is far from 5 million members, and if you guys are present in like 70 countries, and I don't know, numbers really don't matter to these people. They really don't. Other than if those numbers come with a dollar sign in front of them, they care. If those numbers come with are pertain to some sort of statistics or anything, they don't care. At least not publicly. Behind closed doors, they certainly do care, and they talk endlessly about how to up the numbers, how to retain people, and this is why columns like this exist. Hopefully, the willingness to host these meetings will be reflected in the support provided by the authorities of Jalisco and Guadalajara for public services, accommodations, and substantial improvements in security. Okay, so I have another article from 2024 in May, and I think I don't want to go backwards too much, but actually let's stop there and let's go all the way back to one of the first articles that I found here on Milenio by Sara Pozos. This is from 1/10/2022. I think this is going to be, January 10th, 2022. So this is a handful of months prior to Nason pleading guilty. He has not pled guilty at this point. This is early 2022. The guy's been arrested for 2.5 years, basically. And at this point, we were still just waiting for more from the church. So Nason has not pled guilty at this point. This is what Sara Pozos was writing in Milenio in January 2022. The world of this article is titled Deepfakes. And we're going to read this, and it's funny because she's not going to talk about the case with Nason, but if she's talking about this is clearly has something to do with Nason, and she's going to spread this among people that want to learn something about Nason's case. This has nothing about it, but this is out there for a reason. And again, Alan Jackson, Caleb Mason, all these other people were never talking about deepfakes in their defenses, never at all, at any point. Ken Rosenfeld and Alan Sawyer at one point were, but then they got kicked out, pretty soon after. So we'll see. This is what Sara Pozos has to say about deepfakes. The world of misinformation is real. It takes a lot of skill, judgment, and a search for primary sources to isolate fake news and deepfakes. Oh, really? You're telling me? Okay. The former are often easier to detect after years of insistence on spreading them. There is fake news and there is biased information. Biased and tedious and tendentious news coverage. Hashtags and algorithms play an important role here. The latter are all the rage since they involve a computer-generated images in the form of videos and photos that mimic human appearance. Sometimes they mimic a real person, a celebrity, or a public figure. The most serious thing is that deepfakes can be a fake way of creating videos of a person which someone will use or see as real, even if it was never real. I mean, okay, whatever. Technology driven by dark interests is dangerous and can destroy innocent lives. Of course, prosecutors can also destroy innocent lives, and so can the media. But these artificial intelligence-based technologies are a cause for concern in the online world, and they should be cause for concern in the offline world. How to recognize deepfakes. 1, in fake videos of people, there are borders between the photos or videos, and these become visible if you pay attention to the parts of the body that are uncovered and close to clothing. 2, an algorithm might not generate images as accurate as complex beaded earrings. In these cases, you should pay attention to the earrings, and if they are different, it's another clue to suspect the video. Glasses. 3, glasses can be a good place to find manipulation of fake videos. Here you can detect if one is square and the other is oval. Number 4, teeth are difficult for algorithms to generate. Paying attention to the teeth can give you clues as to whether or not the video is authentic or not. And if none of that works, it's best to rely on 2 fundamental elements: real direct knowledge of the person and the brain. Our brain is capable of detecting, in most cases, falsehood in a video, false news, or bias in a news story. Okay, Pozos, you're telling me. That was January 2022, and you know, she's just gonna write like a little bit about deepfakes, and like no one gives a rat's ass about this. Of course, you know, the church ministers, that people like Sara Pozos are talking internally to church members about deepfakes, about this, that, and the third, right? But again, they should have joined. They should have told Nason's team or something, because Nason's defense team was never talking about this. And I practically guarantee you that in the future, they're not going to talk about that, because the shit isn't fake. It's not that this isn't real. This is just like internal messaging that she's putting out here, right? This is from December 12th, 2022. So Nason has accepted his plea deal by this point. It has become clear that that he's going to be in jail for well over a decade. And also by this point, December 12th in 2022, by this point in early December, the documentary from HBO dropped. And that documentary was the first major one to drop, and it sort of set the bar. And it was a very good summary, I think, of events regarding the situation in La Luz Del Mundo, and you know what led up to the criminal case and how it got resolved and whatnot. I want to say that by this point, you know, that documentary is out, and more coming down the pipeline, especially in 2023. But she may mention the HBO thing here, but essentially, you know, we'll just see what she has to talk about here. December 2022. She writes, it was early morning on December 14th, 2014. It was freezing cold and 2:43 a.m. Just 10 days earlier, a cold front had dropped the temperatures to near 0 degrees Celsius in Guadalajara. The nights and days had been filled with sleeplessness, weeping, and supplication for the God of the light of the world to respond to the needs of a people. On Monday of that week, the eighth, Brother Nason Joaquin notified the church of the death of the Apostle Samuel. From that Monday to Sunday, the 14th, the entire church had begun arriving at the world headquarters in which to pay their respects to the body of the man who had in life been named Samuel Joaquin. Did so. In the final minutes of December 14th and the first hour of the in the final minutes of the 13th and the first hour of the 14th, the body was removed for final preparations. Throughout that week, a strange calm was felt by all believers of the church, present and absent. Throughout that week, God acted in the hearts of thousands of believers in an unmistakable and familiar way, sealing God's election in the heart of the faithful. This action of the Creator extended to the mantle of the election to those who entrusted in him. The weather, the extreme fatigue, and without a doubt, the stress of those days had not broken the spirit, the faith in the entire people. Somehow that week, God had prepared the hearts of the believers. God knew it, and so did the faithful. They knew that the moment had arrived. That instant that only happens in very remote times, there every so often established God's plan and unknown to humankind was approaching. Yes, in this way, God acted, and the faithful knew deep within their being and their hearts that the church, that God had chosen Nathan to be his new apostle. They didn't know exactly when God revealed that name in their hearts, but they had heard it. The faith and power of God had sealed it in their beings. There was no hidden choice, no self-proclamation, no prior campaign, nothing of the sort. There was prayer, much prayer, and more prayer. What happened next was stunning. In an instant, the pain ceased, giving way to the comfort promised by God. And from that day on, the chosen one and the church have been and remain one. Now all the stronger, the greater. Now all the stronger because of the greater because of the injustices against them. Y desde ese día elegido iglesia ha sido y según y siguen siendo solo. I'm not gonna fucking read this. okay, look, here's the issue. This is December 2022, and she just doesn't have anything to say about the HBO documentary for some reason. But she has something to say about how Nathan was chosen by God, and how this was revealed to the entire body of the church, right? And it's completely baffling that this person is going to say there was no hidden choice, there was no self-proclamation, no prior campaign, nothing of the sort. I mean, okay, yeah, you can say that, but actually there was. There's so much to say here, but basically we can all, I will just chalk up to saying that 4 years prior to Samuel showing up at a Santa to start, to take over a Santa Cena on like the 14th of August, 4 years that for many years there would Nason or some other brother, but I specifically remember Nason would be the person to start the Santa Cena, to start with some prayers, to start with some invitation of people to come up and sing, to start with this and to start with this, that, and the third. And then eventually at some point, Samuel would pop out and the trumpets would sound and there would be this big major party because now he's going to take over and run the whole operation, right? What is that if not like a prior campaign? What is a prior campaign if not that Nathan is already the son of Samuel? If there was going to be any apostle from anywhere, it was going to be from some. It was going to be from one of the creatures that popped out of Eva Joaquin's pussy, right? Because yeah, Nathan has other siblings, of course. Atlai, what happened to him? Or is it Asael? No, it's Atlai, right? What happened to him? I don't know what he's up to these days. Benjamin was another person. Additionally, there's also God, Uziel was the other brother. And so well, I don't know what it means to say that there was no prior campaign to this. I feel like being a son of Samuel is campaign enough, especially if you're one of these people who's going to hold a major position of power like Nathan did in Arizona, in California, starting Berea, all that stuff. You can't say that there was no prior campaign and that there was no hidden choice. That there was a choice, and there's kind of just always been like a choice all along, and the campaign has just always been there. And she's just kind of just talking out of her ass. I don't really know what she's trying to do there. I just thought that these, they're just these like one or two sentences that are just really funny throughout her work. This is titled The Holy Supper of Globalization. This is from May 8th, 2023. Again, by this point, HBO documentary is out. I think Hulu and some other ones, maybe, I don't think they come out yet by this point, but come on, there's more at this point, and we'll just see what she has to say in May of 2023. Yesterday, the Light of the World celebrated the Holy Communion in 26 countries with 40 locations on 4 continents. Okay, tell us the millions of members at one point. Are you going to tell us at any point? We'll see in this column. Okay, for the first time in the history of contemporary Christianity, thousands of believers in Europe, Africa, Asia, as well as Central and South America participated in the most important ceremony of their faithful in their countries. In a religious celebration that began in Israel, Jerusalem, continued in Belgium, Spain, the United Kingdom, France, and other European countries, crossed the Atlantic to Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Colombia, and ended in Central American countries. Here she's just listing a bunch of countries where Santa Cenas took place. And okay, who cares, right? Once the apostle of Jesus Christ, brother Nason Joaquin Garcia, called together believers who on this occasion did not travel to the city of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, but instead welcomed the apostles' envoy in one of the 40 locations. And once again, the spiritual preparation of each believer required faith, prayer, self-examination, and a constant search for God and his son, Jesus Christ. Okay. The Holy Communion is a commemoration of the Last Supper Jesus Christ shared with his disciples before his death. It is the prequel to his sacrifice for humanity in order to open the doors to eternal life to believers. It also announces or proclaims a second coming of Jesus Christ, no longer for a new sacrifice of death, but to take his church with him into eternity. Above all, it is the opportunity for believers to once again be with God, with Christ, and with the apostle of Jesus Christ. Okay, she's not going to talk about how it's mandatory. She's not going to she's not going to talk about how you basically endanger you're basically at risk of going to hell if you have an opportunity to go to the ceremony and you choose to not do so, and you die in the interim, right? you know, that this is just what members believe. This is what they beat on about all the time in the lead up to these sorts of events. But so be it, right? The uniqueness of such a solemn religious festival is what distinguishes the Holy Communion, which on this occasion has earned the adjective global. This is because it now moves to global levels and extends throughout the year due to the exponential church in more than 40 countries. Give us a number. It's 2023. You guys were saying you had 5 million members back in 2019. And then maybe your ass wasn't saying that there's 5 million members back in the 1990s, but there are publications, there are receipts, there is a slew of evidence that says that the church has been pumping out this number that there's 5 million members since the 1990s. And look, here we're going to say that we're present in 60 countries or something, that the event is global and whatnot. We're super duper special in the history of Christianity. Massimo Introvigna doesn't say that. Other academics, pseudo academics that are invited to talk about La Luz del Mundo don't say this, but Sara Pozos can say it, and she's not going to face any backlash from anybody, right? And again, like numbers are convenient when they're convenient, and then they're not when they're not, right? So thus, with work, perseverance, and faith, believers in the church continue their journey toward eternity, guided by the apostle of Jesus Christ, Brother Nathan Joaquin Garcia. So this is just some column that she has in Milenio. She's just going to say like a few little things here and there. You don't learn anything about her from the church. You don't learn anything about the church from this person. And this person is just going to put out these like dumb little articles on Milenio's website. I don't know why they still give her a platform. They're just going to put these things out there that give her some sort of space to talk about anything. And you know what? When Silem Garcia is banging on and on about wanting to have airtime on Milenio to respond to whatever Milenio has to say, he would do this especially in like 2020 and 2019. This is kind of a little bit of a platform on Milenio to talk about those things. And so, if Slim had anything important to say, he should have communicated with Sara about it, right? And she could have put it here. But look, as we've gone through these things, I wouldn't even think like a member would learn much from this. And so this is like a certain sort of very tame, defanged picture of the church to put out to the world, and then I guess share amongst members to some extent. And so you don't really learn about you don't really learn much about the church from these things. Here she's writing in June 5th, 2023. This is called the sensationalist mode. Massimo Introvigna, one of the world's leading scholars of new religious movements, has put his finger on the current trend in entertainment production. Sensationalism is a tendency among some media outlets and entertainment companies to present a particular topic or news story in a flashy manner. They do this to provoke astonishment or scandal, to sell better, and apparently to make their stories more credible. Are you fucking stupid? Newspapers have been around for centuries. And like, I guess we're talking about current entertainment production, but like, I mean, has she never heard of yellow journalism from like a century ago? Has she never heard about crazy anti-Semitic publications in Europe, after the invention of the printing press, in the 16th century, in the 15th, in the 17th century, on and on, right? I mean, what do you mean when there's like sensationalism is a new tendency amongst media outlets? Like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I really don't know what you're talking about here, okay? Introvigna has found a pattern in the production of series and documentaries, highlighting how these series have a bias, quote, against groups labeled as cults and rely heavily on apostates for the production of their stories, end quote. This bias is clear and tendentious because they seek to sell the idea of a certain degree of perversion within religious groups based on the opinions and statements of those people who were once part of the religion and then for various reasons abandoned it. Their reasons are never investigated, never verified, and never questioned. She's not going to outright talk about the HBO documentary here, and she's probably not going to talk about it in any other thing. But here she's basically gesturing to it because it came out 6 months ago. And like, I mean, what do you mean that the opinions of these people are not investigated, etc.? Bitch, they were investigated. They fucking were. Who the fuck are you talking about? The 5 Jane Does went through a whole civil case across like 3 years ultimately. And then the documentary comes out at the end of the year 2022, right? They get Nason to, the authorities get Nason to accept this guilty plea. He really had no way to weasel out of it. and this is what they could super duper pin him on. He couldn't get out of it. His lawyers couldn't get him out of it. And what do you mean that these reasons were not investigated, never verified, and never questioned? The fat ass Mexican is in jail precisely for these reasons, right? And then what? And then the documentaries come along, and then they make things worse, and like, okay, well, you guys make your own fucking documentaries, huh? Go fucking sue HBO. Like everybody was saying way back when the HBO thing came out in late 2022. Go sue HBO if you really feel like you have a case to put against them. Go sue Hulu. Go sue Netflix. Go sue Univision. Go sue Televisa. Go sue Milenio. All these outlets that you guys can make fucking bank on, right? And but you guys decided to not capitalize on any of it. Your dude is in jail. He needs the money, right? This church is supposed to grow. Don't you need funds for all these sorts of things, left and right for the 70 countries that you guys are present in? Here you're saying 60, 2 years later, you're saying 70. Never at any point are you saying that there's, millions of members or however many millions of members, right? Certainly not 1.9 million in Mexico, right? But like, but why is it? What do you mean? Just for various reasons? What do you mean for various reasons? You know precisely the reasons why. You are writing this article at this point, several years after your dude got arrested. Like Sara can just talk and it's really funny because I'm not too sure if she's really trying to be stupid, but she just kind of is. She's just this strange grifter within the church, right? Like I really have no other way to view her other than this. Instead, these stories about former members of religious groups are mostly brought and taken for granted without question, but financial resources aren't the only motivator for certain individuals who seek fame, power, and destruction because they have become obsessed with destroying the group. I'm obsessed with destroying the group precisely because the church, precisely because the group was obsessed with taking my life and continuing to extract labor and pumping lies into my head and all these other reasons. Like, this person at no point is like validating why people can leave a fucking church, right? And I mean, what is that if not like the number one thing to make a cult a cult, right? Where there is just no legitimate reason to leave it, right? Everyone just wants to go seek fame and power and destruction. I didn't get no power. I didn't get no fame. I didn't get no monetary compensation from the Catholic Church. Tell them this, that they owe me a number of checks, apparently, if I've been hammering on stuff like this for like 6 years, right? There's also an element that's never considered because it doesn't matter much to the major entertainment producers. Discrimination, harassment, bullying, and stigmatization against believers and followers of religious groups. Introvicta makes a statement I love. The victim's quote, the victim's pain isn't alleviated if viewers stereotypes and generalize. If viewers stereotype and generalize, if they objectify hatred against believers. I mean, that's not what those things do. Like, if anything, believers come out. I feel like these documentaries. I'm gonna always argue are for sure to help the victims of these people of the people who are related to the criminal case, who are going to be related to the federal case, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure it's there to help them, but then also this whole thing is precisely interesting because your dude is in jail and because you guys are a cult and because we have people like you pumping these lies out on this platform for somebody apparently, and like I what are you trying to do at any point in any paragraph here? I'm really left like questioning just what is happening. I really don't know who this worked on, right? This shouldn't work on you, right? If you're reading this shouldn't work on you. At their core, the production of series and documentaries related to religious movements whose leaders have been accused of some type of sexual crime clearly incites hatred against those leaders and the followers of that religion. Not necessarily. If I mean, I don't have to repeat what I just said, but no, like this is what you want people to believe in the church so that they can feel like this is a specific religious attack against them. But then again, go sue the fucking federal government, right? Go do that. You guys, why wouldn't you guys do that? If there is something, if there's clearly incitements of hatred against La Luz del Mundo members, are there pogroms held against the La Luz del Mundo people in the Hermosa Provincia? I would want to know, put that on paper, pursue that, help us, enlighten us, please. Disguised as objectivity, documentaries typically give voice to the alleged victims with their often fanciful and inconsistency filled stories. But this exacerbates hatred against believers and results in brutal and extremely serious human rights violations. I think your mouth is a human rights violation. Like you don't have the gall to name the HBO documentary. Fucking name it, right? You over here quoting and relying on this fucking bald Italian who doesn't belong to the church and is apparently some sort of expert on new religions and you know, here, there, and everywhere. He's not. And I mean, if you just like his quotes, right? Yeah, you also like the fact that he's just gonna say he saw 600,000 people at the Santa Cena in August 2019, right? So like please write better. I really don't know what to learn from this, other than citing this to talk about where you were just fucking dumb, where you're just dumb and you don't like provide answers to anybody for anything. Here's another article. This is from July 31st, 2023. The return of the brothers and sisters. The eastern part of Guadalajara is once again bustling with activity for the annual gathering of believers of the La Luz del Mundo church. This time, only the faithful who gather in the thousands of local churches across the country will be present for the religious commemoration. The announcement that stirred the hearts of believers was made known in February, following the reading of a letter sent by the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Nason Joaquin Garcia. In those lines, while the invitation was being read in Mexico for all who so choose who prepare to attend the Holy Communion, hundreds of faithful gathered at the same time in Australia and some Caribbean countries to remember and relive the sacrifice Jesus Christ made for humanity, according to the Christian faith more than 2,000 years ago. I mean, it is like some sort of invitation, but these ceremonies are mandatory. They're practically mandatory for everybody. And I mean, since they are, like, why aren't these numbers higher? Can you just give us more numbers here, other than just telling us, oh, we have 5 people in bumfuck island in the Caribbean next to Guadalupe or Curacao, or we have 2 members over in Perth, Australia. Like, we're not really going to learn anything from you here, other than just you can just name places and just say, oh, we were all there together and we joined the same Zoom call. That I really don't understand, what you're trying to do here. The largest religious festival of the Light of the World was put on hold from gathering thousands of pilgrims at its world headquarters after 3 years of the pandemic. But following the announcement calling for Holy Communion, mobilization and preparations have continued unabated over the past 4 months, both at the host and sub-host churches, as well as the thousands of homes that will open their doors to welcome fellow believers. I mean, she's just talking, right? Believers have gone through extremely difficult years during which hatred against their faith has been rampant. The threats, slanders, and defamation against them for the vast majority of them have only strengthened them. I mean, okay, right, but at no point are you given any numbers, I think, here. On their pilgrimage, the Sisters of La Luz del Mundo have encountered people that they have never seen before, faces that they have never seen before, and in each of them, they see themselves. Knowing that they are equal in faith, united by faith, loved by faith, has encouraged them during this time when they have not been able to gather together as they used to. I mean, who cares? I don't care. We're not learning anything here. This is just like a press release for the church, right? And tomorrow, August 1st, they will begin their feast day by listening to the reading of the letter sent to them by the Apostle of Jesus Christ. After the reading, the faithful in the Guadalajara metropolitan area will begin the chain of prayer in which they ask the Creator of all things for his help and intervention in their petitions. The return of the brothers and sisters is shaking up social media, running out of preparations and counting down the hours until they can meet again in the beautiful province for the biggest celebration of LLDM. I mean, we don't learn anything in this, but look, they give her the space to say stuff. She says some stuff, and no one learns anything from Pozole's mouth here, right? Like, again, she's serving pozole left and right, but you don't want to eat it because there's hair in it, and so therefore it just ruins your mood. And there's really nothing here of substance. There's no nutrients in this writing that she has, right? This is October 14th. I'm sorry, not October, August 14th, 2023. The Light of the World in Mexico appears today to appears today to participate in the Holy Communion, blah, blah, blah. It's the most important festival for the faithful. Today is the long-awaited time, the most anticipated in the last 4 years. Strategically, the meeting only calls upon the church in Mexico, which makes the holiday of greater interest, or at least should be, for the media and the pseudo-journalists who have been responsible for producing biased and prejudiced content against La Luz del Mundo. Following the campaign of media hatred and religious indoctrination initiated against the faithful and against the leader, the Apostle Nason. I mean, you're the pseudo-journalist here. You're the pseudo-academic here. You're the one producing biased and crazy information. Milenio has been rather on the ball about La Luz del Mundo for years. I expect them to continue to. At no point is this person ever going to talk about Univision or even going to have the gall to name any of the documentaries that have been brought out against La Luz del Mundo. But again, you know, here she's just talking. She's just going to hype up the little ceremony, and it doesn't matter. No one really cares about this, right? This is just like a dumb little press release for the church. And if anything, I don't know why your ass is not consecrating yourself and, you know, prior to the Santa Cena, because you should be, but, you know, apparently you're a little too busy writing, you know, stuff for Milenio, right? Today at 4 p.m. and after months of preparation, the unshakable faith of believers will demonstrate once again the conviction in their beliefs, the strength of their hope, the intelligible patience, the absolute love for God and his son, Jesus Christ, the recognition of the principle of apostolic authority placed in a person, and the authentic resilience that has made them gigantic, making their presence inexplicable for some. I mean, explain it then. I mean, explain it. Like, why do things have to be inexplicable? Why does the growth of the church have to be inexplicable? What is inexplicable is the fact that you're not explicating any numbers at any point ever, right? Like, I may have to go back through all of these, but at one point she maybe says the 5 million member thing, but then like in some of these she's just not saying it. And we're long past 2019. We're a good chunk of time past the acceptance of the guilty plea. And again, I mean, just Sara Pozos, we're just not learning anything from her, right? Today, absolutely all of the world's hatred against them will be transformed into the offering each person will present before God. Today's slander will rebound against those who wield it and will dissolve it instantly, causing no further harm. Today, the hearts of believers will rest from the religious persecution and discrimination that have burdened them in recent years. Today, when the apostle of Jesus Christ exercises the authority conferred by the immovable creator, blah, 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 his sacrifice will be materialized in this formula that immortalized him, called the Holy Communion. Today, the weeping will no longer be for physical separation, nor for the hatred of the world, nor for bitter herbs, nor for the pain of not knowing they are together. Today, the weeping will be because after 4 years they have been able to reunite, they have been able to exercise the right, and because they will once again be with God, one with Christ and one with the apostle. I mean, remotely they'll be one with the apostle, and, you know, I would say that remotely with Christ and remotely with God. But look, I mean, she's just gonna say some things in these articles, and we're not gonna learn anything. And if anything, every sort of accusation here is projection. Because what do you mean that there's religious persecution and discrimination? I don't doubt that shit has happened, but you know, Sara Pozos has to know that the most nefarious people acting against the average common day member in La Luz del Mundo is her and her cronies, her consiglieres, her buddies that she hangs out with behind closed doors, you know, when they're thinking about writing this thing, writing that thing, talking to J. Gordon Melton, talking to Westbrook, et cetera, right? If anything, they are the more, they please, I hope that they know this. You know, they can be as evil as they want to be, but I hope that they know that they have some sort of, that they are constantly projecting when they say things like this in public. Because when they're saying that, oh, the church is under attack and everyone's being lied to, and we're being attacked, and there's vultures, you know, circling over above us, and they're just ready to swoop down and take people out and feast upon the dead and feast upon the weak and exploit the faith of people because they want to send everybody to hell, right? I mean, that's you. That's literally you. That's not me. That's you. You know, me and other folks in the non-LLDM, anti-LLDM ecosystem online are doing anything but the things that that it is your profession to do. That's all I have to say. Yeah, so this one we're not going to read because it doesn't talk about La Luz del Mundo, but essentially you don't learn anything. She's just going to say some stuff about like human rights, this and that, never about the church, but she's just going to talk about it like you won't learn anything. You just straight up won't learn anything from Sara Pozos here. This is the last one I want to go into, and keep in mind the first two that we went through were from late May 2024, and this one that we're going to end with is from earlier than those two. It is May 6th, 2024. So, let's read this. From unshakable faith to indestructible unity. Sure. Tomorrow, the thousands of believers of the Light of the World Church will gather to thank God for the 55 years of the life of Nathan. They will celebrate as always in prayer, worshiping God and recognizing him as the creator of all things. Congratulations, greetings, and details to celebrate his anniversary extend from north to south and from east to west in thousands of local churches in urban and rural areas, in the largest cities and in almost unknown towns. Whether a few believers gather or thousands gather, in impressive monuments to the faithful or in small, modest buildings, wherever there is a believer in the La Luz del Mundo, wherever there is a believer in the light of the world, they are united in prayer through faith. Okay, and through prayer comes comfort for the faithful and the apostle of Jesus Christ, because the circumstances and times of adversity that the church is experiencing brought hatred and discrimination, and as a consequence also brought pain and tears almost constantly. But that pain in this time of adversity also provoked something else, the indestructible unity that God has given the faithful with the church and with the apostle and vice versa. Knowing that they are one has strengthened and increased their faith, an unshakable faith that is embodied in the construction of the churches and the thousands of baptisms that they have throughout 60 countries where the church is present, and the hundreds of cultural and social activities, and most important, in the lives of believers who endure as the apostle does the injustices, the lies, the slander against them. Knowing that they are persecuted, discriminated against, and hatred has led them to expand their reasons for hoping even longer for a response to their requests based on the knowledge and faith of course that exists. Both the believers and the apostle Nathan have known each other over their entire lives, and his life has been public since birth. Okay, knowing each other in this way has given them the peace of mind to await the moment when the apostle's name will be vindicated, knowing his innocence. His name will not be vindicated. He's going to be on a sex offenders registry for the rest of his life. There's no innocence to be known, as far as we know. If you happen to have something, you might want to contact Alan Jackson, because apparently you have, something he doesn't know and can't get to in his capacity, right? But, let's move on. And until that day arrives, the faithful wait, to paraphrase Sabine's, as the loving do. They wait in silence, they search in prayer, they never give up, even though they apparently walk alone. They give themselves every day, because the love of God is what has saved them. Listen, Sara Pozos' dumbass is going to hear talk about how people from more than 60 countries are going to gather to celebrate Nathan's birthday. But like, again, if we go to those articles that I read earlier, she says that there's 70 countries that the church is present in. So like, I'm not crazy, right? Like, please go check this yourself. 1 week, this person is saying, 1 week in May 2024, this person is saying that there are 60 countries where the church is present. Look at this. It says it right here. The next week, she's saying La Luz del Mundo is present in more than 70 countries. Thank you, everybody. That's basically all I have to say. Sara Pozos speaks for herself. Go read these things for yourself. Let me know what you think. If you happen to have any interesting writings from her that I probably don't know of, please send them my way. If you happen to have her thesis from when she was a student or whatever in Guadalajara, or whatever university she went to in Mexico, please let me know. I would like to get my hands on that. I would like to read it in full, because apparently this learned person, needs a little more ed in her life. And I'm just continually baffled that we have these completely incompetent people running the church and just perpetuating these lies that they can't get on the same page about, right? Like, I truly don't get how this person has just like I'm sorry. Like I really shouldn't be opening these tabs, but I find it incredibly revelating that we can read the slate of writings that Sara Pozos has in Milenio, a platform that La Luz del Mundo apparently is never gets to pop up on, but they do here. And then here when they pop up, Sara Pozos is apparently, again, like I like the way I said it earlier, just serving pozole with like hair in it. We don't learn anything here. Everyone, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Please share this with somebody. I would like to, if you have any more ideas about videos you would like me to do, please send them my way. Below, I will leave my email and some other ways that you can contact me if you have any interest in this material or in getting in contact with me. Again, we're going to see more of this from her. I'm going to try to keep tabs on it. And I appreciate, the space to read through these things with you all, because I read them earlier and I started catching some things that I did not catch earlier. But again, the question remains. I truly don't know how many millions of members there are in the church right now. I would like to find the most recent citation that I could find for recent stuff. Apparently it's 70 countries as of like a year ago. And then like a week prior to that, it was like 60 countries, right? And then like a couple years prior to that, in like 2019, it was like 50 countries or so. But you know what? Again, if they can lie to you about these numbers, they can lie to you about anything. Just don't believe them on that one thing and question them. And you should demand more from these institutions. I mean, I am confident that we're going to dissolve this group into the ground within my lifetime. It's a life's mission of mine. And you know what? Once the Catholic Church, catches wind of this, they're going to send me a big ass check. Take care, everyone. Peace.